Welcome to our deep dive. This time we're looking into the world of self-help, but not quite the way you might expect.
Oh, yeah, definitely with a twist.
Yeah. You've given us some pretty fascinating sources to work with this time around.
Hmm.
Reviews of I'm Dysfunctional, You're Dysfunctional.
Yeah,
That's by Wendy Kaminer.
interesting choice.
And Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel
A
Kahneman.
classic.
And even The Culture Map by Aaron Meyer.
Okay, yeah, quite a mix.
So we're going to see how these books, even though they come from different times and are about different things,
Yeah,
can give us some surprising insights into how people behave,
right.
the whole self-help industry itself, and maybe even ourselves.
I think you're going to be surprised how much these books actually connect.
Yeah. Okay. So ready to get started.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's unpack this.
Okay.
Starting with I'm Dysfunctional, You're Dysfunctional.
All right.
Now this is from 1992
Mm-hmm.
and the Kirkus Review. That kind of makes it sound like Kaminer doesn't hold back.
Why?
At all.
It sounds promising.
Yeah, she's taking on everything from those, like popular 12-step programs
Yeah.
to those talk shows everybody was watching back then.
Like Oprah, that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And she does it all with a lot of wit
Uh-huh.
and kind of a healthy dose of skepticism.
Well, that's important, right? To be able to question things,
Oh, absolutely.
especially in the self-help world.
Totally.
Because sometimes those promises can be a little too good to be true.
Right.
And Kaminer's critique is really important because, well, she's not just trying to be funny.
Right.
She's raising some serious concerns about what could be some of the downsides of the self-help movement.
Okay, so what's she saying?
Well, for instance, she argues that some parts of it, they might actually make people feel more like victims
Oh, wow.
and less empowered,
Which is?
which is, well, it's the opposite of what it's supposed to do, right?
Yeah, like totally backwards.
Yeah, exactly. And she even goes so far as to compare it to religious fundamentalism
No.
and how it can sometimes, like shut down different opinions.
Okay, strong comparison.
Yeah,
That's a pretty strong statement.
it is. It is.
So the Wikipedia entry, it mentions that she actually calls out specific books.
Oh, does she?
Yeah, and movements, even bringing up the power of positive thinking.
Huh. Yeah, that's a big one.
It sounds like she's saying that a lot of self-help is just
Mm-hmm.
repeating the same old things, but in like a new package.
I mean, there's definitely a sense of some trends repeating themselves in the self-help world,
Yeah.
like repackaging old ideas with a new spin.
Yeah, would you say so?
I think there's some truth to that.
Okay.
Definitely. And, this is actually where Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow comes in.
Okay, how so?
So his research on something called cognitive biases helps explain why those, simple sayings,
Right.
even if they're not very deep,
Yeah.
can be so appealing to us. Essentially, our brains, well, they're kind of hardwired to look for easy answers and explanations,
Oh, interesting.
even if they aren't completely accurate.
So you're saying that our brains are naturally drawn to self-help
Yeah.
because it offers those quick fixes
Right.
and easy solutions that we all kind of crave?
Yeah, I think there's something to that. It's like,
It's like our brains are taking the easy way out.
it is a bit like that, yeah.
Uh-huh.
See, Kahneman talks about these two systems of thinking.
Okay.
There's system one, which is fast,
Okay.
intuitive, and runs on emotions,
Okay.
and it loves shortcuts.
Got it.
Then there's system two, which is slower, more deliberate, and logical.
So system one is like that friend who always jumps to conclusions.
Yeah, exactly.
And system two is the one who's like, hold on, let's think about this for a second.
That's a great way to put it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is key to understanding why self-help, despite some of the valid criticisms from people like Kaminer, is still so popular.
Right.
It often appeals to our system one thinking
Okay.
by offering these easy narratives and quick fixes
Yeah.
that don't require a lot of deep thought.
Like instant gratification for your brain.
It is a bit like that,
Right.
but as Kaminer points out, this can be a problem
Okay.
because it might oversimplify things
Right.
and even lead to some unintended negative consequences.
Okay, so it's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it is.
We love the easy answers, but those easy answers
Mhm.
might not always be the best for us in the long run.
Right. Like anything, you have to approach it with balance.
Yeah. Now, how does the culture map fit into all of this?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay, tell me.
So that book is about navigating cultural differences in business, right?
Right, yeah.
Which I know seems pretty different from self-help.
Seems like a totally different thing.
Yeah. But think about it. A lot of self-help,
Mm.
it promotes these universal solutions,
Okay, like one size fits all.
as if everyone deals with the same problems in the same way.
Like a magic formula.
Yeah, kind of. But Meyer shows us that cultural norms,
Right.
they have a huge impact on how we communicate,
Mm-hmm.
how we make decisions,
Mm-hmm.
and even how we build trust with each other.
Interesting.
What works in one culture might not work at all in another.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So are you saying that a self-help technique
Yeah.
that might work really well for someone in one culture
Mm-hmm.
could totally backfire on someone from a different culture?
Exactly.
Okay.
For example, think about how differently people give and receive feedback,
Okay.
depending on their culture.
Right.
What might seem like normal, constructive criticism in one culture
Right.
could be perceived as extremely rude or disrespectful in another.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a really important point. So we've got Kaminer warning us about the potential traps of self-help,
Mm-hmm.
Kaminen explaining why our brains are so drawn to its promises, and Meyer adding this whole other layer
Yeah.
by showing how culture can totally change what we even consider self-improvement.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating when you start to see how it all connects.
This is fascinating.
It is. It makes you think how much of what we think about ourselves
Yeah.
is actually shaped by our culture
Right.
and how much is truly universal.
That is a great question. I'm really curious to explore this further.
I think we should.
Maybe we can dive into some specific examples from each book
Okay.
to kind of see how these ideas play out in real life.
Sounds good to me. Let's do it.
All right.
Okay, so let's get back to Kaminer.
Okay.
And I'm dysfunctional. You're dysfunctional.
Right.
Remember that quote from the Kirkus Review?
Refresh me.
Yeah, about those codependency experts?
So, yeah.
It said, codependency experts stress that disease, with the Urset's profundity of adolescence discovering that God is dog spelled backwards.
I remember now.
That's about it.
Pretty funny, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. But, she has a point. It's like she's saying that a lot of the language used in self-help, well, it's deliberately vague
Yeah.
and tries to sound deeper than it actually is.
Right. Like it's trying to trick you.
Exactly. And you know what? This actually ties back to what we were just talking about with Kahneman.
Oh, okay. How so?
Well, think about it. Those catchy phrases
Yeah.
and overly simplified explanations,
Mm-hmm.
they're perfect for our System 1 thinking.
Oh, okay.
They're easy to grasp,
Right.
and they don't require a lot of mental effort.
Like snackable knowledge.
It is a bit like that.
Yeah. So Kaminer's kind of analyzing the language of self-help,
Mm-hmm.
while Kahneman is showing us the science behind why that kind of language works.
Exactly. Like they're looking at the same issue, but from totally different angles.
Yeah, that's cool.
Right.
Yeah, it's like two pieces of a puzzle fitting together.
That's a good analogy. And it's not just the language that Kaminer critiques either.
Hmm.
She's also worried about this idea of a culture of victimhood.
A culture of victimhood.
Yeah, that she sees in some parts of the self-help movement.
Oh, okay.
She argues that it can actually lead people to feel powerless
Oh, wow.
and dependent on others, which, well, she sees that as a real problem
Yeah.
for both individuals and society as a whole.
Makes sense. That makes me think about how some people, well, they might be more vulnerable to those kinds of messages than others.
Yeah, for sure.
Like if you're already feeling lost or you're struggling,
Mm-hmm.
the promise of a quick and easy solution can be really tempting.
It is.
Even if it's not really based on anything solid.
Absolutely. And this is where Meyer's work on culture comes in.
Okay.
It adds another layer of complexity.
Okay, tell me.
So let's say there's the self-help book, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it tells you that being assertive is like the key to success. Now, that might totally resonate with people from cultures that really value individual expression
Uh-huh.
and direct communication.
Mm-hmm.
But in cultures that actually prioritize harmony
Okay.
and indirectness,
Right.
then that same message,
Yeah.
it can be totally misinterpreted
Yeah.
or even lead to conflict.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So what's considered dysfunctional or even healthy? Well, that can totally change depending on where you come from.
exactly.
What works for one person, well, it might not work at all for another.
And it's so true. Like something that's seen as like a positive sign of personal growth in one culture
Right.
could be seen as super rude or disrespectful in another.
Yeah. This just goes to show, like, how important it is to understand those cultural differences.
Mm-hmm.
And not just in, like, business, like Meyer focuses on,
Right, right.
but in, like, all aspects of life,
Totally.
especially when it comes to personal development.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about how complicated this whole self-help thing can be
Right.
and how much culture plays a role.
Mm-hmm.
But what about those cognitive biases that Kahneman talks about?
Yeah.
How do we avoid falling prey to them?
Well, that's a good question.
Is our system one thinking always going to win out?
Not necessarily. I think the first step is awareness.
Okay, so how do we become more aware?
Well, by understanding how our minds work,
Uh-huh.
we can start to catch ourselves when, system one is kind of taking over.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we can make a conscious effort to engage system two,
Oh, okay.
a slower, more thoughtful part of our brains.
So it's about pausing,
Yes.
taking a step back,
Exactly.
and not just accepting those catchy slogans
Mm-hmm.
and easy fixes
Right.
at face value.
You got it.
Okay.
And remember, this isn't about rejecting self-help completely.
No, okay.
I mean, there are a lot of really valuable insights and helpful tools out there.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's crucial,
Yeah.
like really crucial, to approach it with a critical eye,
Okay, yeah.
to think about, like, the source of the information,
Right.
what evidence are they basing their claims on,
Mm-hmm.
and how does it all fit with your own values
Yeah.
and your cultural background,
Right.
all that stuff.
That's so important to be like an informed consumer of self-help,
Exactly.
not just blindly follow, like whatever we come across.
Right.
So for someone like diving into these books,
Yeah.
what should they be keeping in mind? What's the big takeaway here?
Well, I think the most valuable thing is to see how these different perspectives connect
Okay.
and kind of inform one another.
Okay.
So when you're reading Kaminer's critique,
Mm-hmm.
think about the cognitive biases that Kahneman explains.
Yeah.
And when you're exploring Meyer's insights on culture,
Mm-hmm.
think about how they might shed light on why certain self-help approaches are so appealing.
Right.
Or, why they might not work for everyone.
Yeah. So it's about using these books as a way to analyze the self-help industry, to understand our own thinking better,
Yeah.
and maybe even challenge some of our deepest beliefs about what it even means
Mm-hmm.
to be functional or successful.
Absolutely. And you know what? There's actually one more crucial element we haven't even talked about yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, what is it?
And it connects all three of these books
Okay.
in a really surprising way.
Ooh, I love a good mystery. Now I'm intrigued.
I think you'll find this interesting.
All right, tell me more. Okay, so what is this surprising connection? I'm ready.
Well, we've been talking about all this stuff with self-help,
Mm-hmm.
cognitive biases,
Yeah,
cultural differences,
right.
but kind of woven through all of these topics
Uh-huh.
is this question of personal responsibility.
Personal responsibility.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I see how that connects to, like, Kaminer's critique.
Right.
She seems to, she's kind of pushing back against the idea
Yeah.
that self-help sometimes puts too much emphasis on, like...
Blaming things outside of yourself.
Right.
Instead of encouraging people to, take responsibility for their own actions.
Exactly. It's like, are we really in control of our lives, or are we just,
Yeah.
at the mercy of external forces?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question.
And remember Kahneman's research on how our brains can sometimes trick us?
Oh, yeah, with those biases.
Yeah, exactly. Well, those cognitive biases he talks about,
Hmm.
they can make us more likely to blame others
Okay.
or like external circumstances for our problems.
Right. It's easier that way.
It is. We might see patterns that aren't really there
Oh, yeah.
or overestimate our own abilities
Mm-hmm.
while underestimating like the role of luck or
Yeah.
chance.
Right. Like, it's easier to blame bad luck than to admit we made a mistake.
Exactly.
It's like we're naturally inclined to create these stories
Mm-hmm.
that make us feel better,
Yeah.
even if they aren't completely true.
It's a very human thing to do.
It is.
Yeah.
And then Meyer, he brings in this fascinating layer of culture
Okay. Yeah.
and how it influences how we understand responsibility.
Okay.
Think about it. In some cultures,
Yeah.
taking individual responsibility for mistakes is a really big deal.
Right.
While in others, well, responsibility is seen as something that's, shared
Oh, okay.
or collective.
So even how we think about responsibility
Mm.
and like who we assign it to
Right.
is shaped by the culture we grew up in.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder how much of our self-perception,
Mm-hmm.
our sense of agency in the world,
Yeah.
is truly our own,
It's a great question.
and how much is influenced by, our cultural background.
It really is. And it's a question that all three of these authors, each in their own way,
Mm-hmm.
encourage us to really think about.
Okay.
Kaminer cautions us against,
Yeah.
giving up our personal responsibility to self-help gurus or movements.
Right. Like, don't just blindly follow.
Exactly. And Kahneman, well, he wants us to become more aware of those mental shortcuts.
Yeah. Those biases.
Yeah, the ones that can lead us astray.
Right.
So we can make more
Mm-hmm.
more thoughtful decisions.
Right.
And then there's Meyer. His work reminds us that cultural differences impact, well, not only how we view responsibility,
Okay.
but also how we interact with others.
Right. So it's all connected. So if you connect all the dots,
Yeah.
it's like these books are all encouraging us
Mhm.
to take ownership of our thoughts,
Yeah.
our choices,
Right.
and how we understand the world around us.
That's a great way to put it.
It's not about rejecting self-improvement, or
Right.
like blaming ourselves for everything.
No.
But it's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between recognizing our own agency and understanding the forces,
Mm-hmm.
both internal and external,
Right.
that shape our lives.
That is a really insightful way to put it. I think that's the key takeaway from this whole deep dive.
Yeah.
Self-help at its best.
Mm-hmm.
It should empower us to better understand ourselves and our place in the world.
Right.
But that takes real critical thinking,
Yeah.
self-awareness,
Uh,
and a willingness to recognize the complexities of human behavior,
right.
cultural differences,
Yeah.
and those,
Mhm.
quirky ways our minds work.
It makes me think of that saying, the unexamined life is not worth living.
Ooh, that's a good one.
These authors, each in their own way,
Mm-hmm.
they're urging us to examine our lives,
Yes.
our choices,
Yeah.
and the assumptions that we hold.
Absolutely.
And that's a journey
Mm-hmm.
that ultimately each of us has to take on our own.
That's so true. And as you continue exploring these ideas
Yeah.
and the world of self-help,
Mm-hmm.
I hope you'll keep in mind
Yeah.
this interplay of personal responsibility, cultural context,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
those fascinating, sometimes frustrating ways our minds work.
It's been a really thought-provoking deep dive.
And has been,
Thanks for,
of course.
for guiding us through all these sources.
My pleasure.
We'll leave our listeners with this final thought. How might understanding your own cultural background
Mm-hmm.
and the backgrounds of others help you build stronger, more meaningful connections?
Ooh, that's a good one to ponder.
Food for thought as you continue your journey of self-discovery. Until next time.